Evan did not plan to buy a ship that day. He went to the Frontier auction yard to look for engine parts and old wiring bundles, nothing more. The sun of the dry moon hung low and pale. The air smelled like hot metal and dust, and every row of wrecks looked tired. Still, he walked the aisles with careful steps, hands in the pockets of his patched jacket, eyes measuring every bolt and seam. He was a mechanic first and a dreamer second. That order kept him alive. Lot 27 sat crooked on its landing struts near the boundary fence. The hull was scuffed and sun-bleached, a dull gray with patches that did not match. The registry, numbers were half scraped away. One side of the cargo bay door had a dent deep enough to make the light bend, but the spine of the ship, the true line that told whether a frame still had life, was straight. The intakes were dusty, not torn. The keel plates had rust stains, but no breaks. He paused. His fingers traced the air, sketching repairs. He could see his hands on those bolts. He could hear the old engines cough and then answer. A man in a red cap joined him. "She's a junker," the man said. "Not worth the fuel to tow." "Maybe," Evan said, and kept looking. The man shrugged and moved on. People at these auctions always said something. They liked to see your face change. Evan's face did not change. He checked the undercarriage and the heat scoring along the aft edge. He checked the panel near the fuel valve and the way the light fell through the cracked viewport. He stepped away when the bell rang to call bidders under the shade canopy. Auctioneer stood on a metal crate with a data pad. He had a loud voice for a thin man. An assistant rolled a portable screen with pictures, but the images were gray and jumpy. Prices rose and fell. A drone camera buzzed like an angry fly. Evan waited. "Lot 27, the auctioneer called. "Cargo shuttle, ex-courier in the records. Frame straight, engines present, no flight guarantees, current deed attached, with special clause. Sold as is, no liens, starting at 2,000 credits. Murmurs moved through the crowd. Evan listened for the words that mattered. Somebody said, "Sovereign clause." Someone else laughed. The auctioneer tapped the data pad. "The deed includes a sovereign safeguard notation. The yard has no extra data and assumes no duty. Buyer takes all obligations. We all heard that? Good. 2,000, 2,000, 1,8, 1,6, 1,5. You, sir, at 1,5. Hands rose and dropped, a tide that reached only halfway up Evan's boots. He could almost hear the fear under the jokes. Sovereign meant a government once cared about this ship. People did not want that kind of attention parked outside their workshop. 1,3, the auctioneer said. 1,3, do I hear it? 1,2, 1,000 credits? Evan lifted his hand. The auctioneer pointed. We have 1,000. Do I hear 11? Silence. A breeze scraped grit along the concrete. 1050? The drone camera buzzed closer and then drifted back. Sold at 1,000 to the quiet man in the gray jacket. Paperwork always took longer on frontier moons. The office had a fan that ticked like an old clock. The clerk's shirt had a coffee stain in the shape of a small continent. She slid the deed across the desk with 2 fingers. Sign here, thumbprint there. He read the paragraph with the special note. It was short, and yet it made the whole page feel heavy. Sovereign, safeguard. Custodial asset declared under protective code. Title transfer includes custodial duty until code release event. The words were plain. They could mean almost anything. What is the custodial asset? Evan asked. The clerk chewed gum and clicked a window on her screen. No details in the yard file, she said. Came like that. The ship sat in impound a long time. Some owner died in a different system. Then a bank folded. Then it landed here. You know how it is. I know how it is, Evan said. He signed. He took the metal fob with the new registration and felt how light it was. He thought about the weight of the duty he could not see. On the way out, he passed the man in the red cap again. Enjoy your new problem, the man said with a smile. Evan gave a small nod. I usually do. The ship smelled like old air when he opened the main hatch. Dry filters, faint coolant, dust. The emergency strips along the floor glowed in a tired way. He walked through the cargo bay first because that was where the surprises often hid. Crates strapped down with brittle lines. A tarp that was more holes than cloth. He lifted corners, looked under. Found nothing but an old wrench and a blinking locator tag with a dead battery. The main corridor was narrow. He kept one hand on the wall and one on his toolkit. He passed a doorway where the control room should be and saw it half-lit, panels open and wires like vines. He heard a soft hum, a kind of whisper you only heard if you listened. He followed it down to the engine room. The engine room was wrong and right at the same time. The right part was the frame. The support struts had no cracks. The coolant lines were firm. The wrong part sat at the core, not a normal engine heart but something grown. A sphere the size of a water tank, ribbed and faintly translucent, nested in a web of cables. The surface pulsed like slow breath. It gave off a tiny warmth that made the hairs on his arms stand up. He stood very still. "Hello," he said without thinking. The sphere brightened and then dimmed, as if answering. Evan exhaled. "So, that's the special clause," he murmured. He had seen living cores before, but always under strict rules, always behind thick glass with guards and serious scientists nearby. He had never seen one open on a cheap ship at a dusty yard. He walked around it, careful with his steps, and checked the laces where the cables met. The old fittings were sound. Someone had sealed this with care years ago, then left it to sleep. On a small side panel he found a plate. Arcline Biocore, Royal Survey Variant, Do Not Sever. He traced the letters with a fingertip and felt an old history press against his skin. "Do you have a name?" he asked the room softly. A soft tone slid through the air like a single note. He took that as a yes. He also took it as a warning. A royal variant meant royalty somewhere. Sovereign safeguard made more sense now. He checked the power board. The ship had some charge left, not enough to lift, but enough to wake systems for a minute. He did not wake them yet. He kept moving. The door at the end of the engine room was locked. The lock was not physical. It was a pattern lock. Evan pulled a small interface pad from his bag and touched the contact point. A message appeared in simple patient text. Custodial chamber secured. Authorized warden required. Present seal or proceed with care. He smiled a little at the tone of the words. Proceed with care. He did not have any seal. He had a new deed and a clean thumb. He did not try to force the door. He explored the rest of the ship first. He kept a list in his head. Air filters to change. One cracked pipe that could be patched with resin. Control room number 3, panel missing screws. The viewport needed a new seal. The pilot chair had a tear and someone had put tape over it like a bandage. He wrote it all down on an old slate. He kept in his pocket. He liked how chalk felt in his fingers. At last he returned to the locked door. He sat cross-legged on the floor and looked at the message again. He thought about seals and duties and how people hid important things behind. Important words. He thought about safety. He thought about harm. He decided to wake the ship a little more and see what the ship itself would say. In the control room, he patched in a portable power cart and flipped 3 switches in a slow, calm sequence. Lights climbed the walls. The old displays flickered, and then chose to live. A voice came out of a ceiling speaker, soft and low, like a story read to a child. "Hello, Warden Unknown. Please identify." "My name is Evan," he said. He kept his voice steady. "I purchased this ship at auction. I am here to repair it and make it safe. I am also here to handle any custodial duty attached to the deed, with care." "Hello, Evan," the voice said. "You are not a recorded warden. The warden key is absent. Custodial duty remains in force. You may proceed with care." "Thank you," Evan said. He meant it. A small smile flickered at the corners of his mouth. "Can you tell me what is behind the secured door in the engine room?" "Custodial chamber," the voice said. "Occupant in stasis. Vital signs. Steady. Protective code attached. Do not sever core. Do not evacuate without seal." Evan's heartbeat changed. A person. He had guessed a person, but hearing it made the room feel different. He imagined opening the door and seeing a stranger. He imagined the person waking in a ship bought by a quiet mechanic in a dusty yard. He imagined fear. He imagined trust. "Are there hazards if I open the door?" he asked. "No external hazards," the voice said. "Standard stasis thaw sequence. Ready. Occupant may be weak on waking. Offer water. Speak gently." He rubbed a hand across his face. "Okay," he said. "I can do that." He hesitated. "Who is the occupant?" The voice paused, as if looking for words. "Name, Ceres. Role, Sovereign. Title, Queen of the Lumen Marches. Custodial tag, Sovereign Safeguard." Evan stared at the panel for a long second. That explained the fear in the auction crowd. That explained the living core. That explained the careful words on the lock. It also explained why his stomach felt like he had missed a step on a ladder. A queen. On his ship. He returned to the engine room and stood before the locked door. "Open, please," he said. "Confirm," the voice answered. "Proceed with care." The door unsealed with a whisper. A thin haze rolled out, cold and clean. Lights brightened inside. The unknown ships came down like sharp birds, steady and sure. Dust lifted across the yard in brown sheets. Sirens kept their steady tone. Evan watched the approach on the quiet scanner. He counted heartbeats and checked for options. The ship, under his hands, was old and proud. It would fly again, but right now it was more hope than engine. "They will land near the open ground," Ceres said. She sat straight in the taped chair, hands calm on her knees. "They want space to move and to show power." Evan nodded. "Then we will not be there when they look." He stood and moved with care. In the cargo bay, he pulled a tarp off 2 flat movers, small sleds with magnets for heavy crates. He locked them under the hull to change the ship's shadow. He scattered 3 empty fuel drums on the far side to look like clutter. Little things could confuse quick eyes. Back in the control room, he dimmed all lights to a soft gray. He left, only one thin strip glowing near the floor so they could still walk. Ceres watched him the way a captain might watch a good deckhand, quiet, approving, present. The unknown ship set down beyond the boundary fence with soft thumps. One after another, they bled dust and folded landing legs. A scratchy voice came across the public yard speaker. "Auction authority, stand clear. We're authorized to seize one asset. Cooperative behavior will be rewarded." Evan leaned toward the ceiling and whispered, "Ship, can you copy that voice?" "Yes," the ship said softly. "Match the tone," Evan said. "If they hail us direct, stall for time." "Understood," the ship said. Ceres stood and touched the living core through the wall with the band at her brow. It was not a physical touch, but the ship felt it. "We may have a few minutes," she said. "Enough to make choices," Evan said. They watched new dots appear. At the yard edge where people gathered, the auctioneer walked out with his hands visible and a brave expression. Yard workers stood behind planters and hull ribs. This moon had seen trouble before. It knew how to make a line that was not exactly a wall. A direct hail came through the ship's local band. It was clear and clipped. "Vessel Arcline variant. Registry Mark 27 for auction transfer. Identify your captain and prepare to receive boarders." Evan glanced at Ceres. She gave a small nod. The ship answered in a gentle, neutral voice. "This is a decommissioned cargo shuttle. Under maintenance, no captain present, no unsafe condition aboard." "Cut the evasion," the hail voice snapped. "Your core shows life signal. Open your hatch." Evan looked at the hard-cut antenna switch and then at the panel that still showed local hails. The core had old instincts. The hunters had sniffers that felt for those instincts. He could not change that now. He could decide what to do next. "We have no flight clearance," the ship said slowly, following Evan's plan to stall. "Landing clamps engaged. Dock access is blocked by yard. Rules." "Authorization supersede rules," the hail voice said. "Open your hatch or we cut it." Ceres looked at Evan. "If they step inside," she said, "they will not leave without me." "Then the answer is simple," Evan said. "We do not let them step inside. He jogged to the bay controls and checked the landing clamps. They were old claw arms sunk into the concrete. He could release 2 by remote command, but the third had a manual lever outside the hull, near the starboard strut. He did not love that design. It meant someone had to stand in dust to pull it free. He returned to Saris. 2 clamps I can pop from here, he said. 1, I must unhook outside. Saris lifted her chin. Tell me what to do. You stay with the ship and with the core, he said. You help it wake enough to lift on partial thrust. You keep power low and smooth. I will run, pull, and come right back. She held his eyes. You risk yourself for a stranger from a different sky. You are not a stranger now, he said in simple words that felt like truth. You are part of my duty, and I like a clean job. Then go, she said, and her voice carried more than order. It carried trust. Evan ran down the corridor, his steps light and sure, toolkit bouncing against his hip. He paused at the hatch to listen. The yard beyond was a bowl of sound. Sirens, shouted words, the thrum of cooling engines. He edged the hatch open just enough to slip through, then pulled it closed behind him with both hands to keep the seal quiet. The air outside was hot and tasted like iron. He kept low and moved along the hull curve, body close to metal. He passed the scattered fuel drums. He slid under the ship where the shadow was deeper. He could see the manual lever above the starboard strut. A black handle with yellow paint worn to silver. A voice barked farther down the row. You! Hands off that panel! Boots pounded. Somewhere a crate fell and clanged. Evan had no time to think more than he needed. He reached the lever. He felt along the base for the lock pin. It was rusted, in place. He fumbled for a small awl in his pocket, set the point, and tapped with the heel of his hand. The pin moved a hair. He breathed, tapped again, and it slid free like a stubborn thorn, leaving a sore finger. He pulled the handle. It resisted. He leaned in with both arms and used his legs. The handle gave with a snap he felt through bones and teeth. The clamp above his head folded away from the strut. The ship settled a centimeter. The hull creaked like old wood but held. Starboard clamp released. He whispered toward the skin of the ship. Copy, the ship whispered back from a speaker near the gear housing, voice soft as breath. Port side clamps ready for release on your mark. Mark, Evan said as he rolled out from under the belly. In the control room, Saris touched the core with her band. Release both port clamps, she said. Released, the ship said. The frame lifted a fraction lighter on its legs. Evan sprinted for the hatch. A shape rounded the row end, one of the hunters in a dark pressure suit with a visor like a mirror. The figure raised a hand in a stop sign. Evan raised both his hands and kept walking toward his own door. Not fast, not slow. This vessel is flagged, the visor voice said through an external speaker. You will open it. This vessel is broken, Evan said in plain words, voice steady. It cannot open without power cycles. Power cycles are unsafe with people near the core. We can talk from a safe distance. Open it, the figure repeated. Evan shook his head once. Not without a seal, and not with you this close to a warm line. The figure hesitated at that. People who worked with engines understood risk. People who did not sometimes pretended. This one did not move for a full breath. That was all the time Evan needed to reach his hatch and step through. He closed it with a firm click and locked 3 latches with one smooth motion. Ready, he said to Saris as he slid into the co-pilot pad. Ready, she answered. Her hands were steady on the armrests, not to grip, but to focus. Ship, Evan said. Do we have enough to lift to yard roof height? Yes, the ship said. Partial thrust only. External air dust density high. Then take us up smooth, Evan said. He breathed in, breathed out, and kept his eyes open. The living core swelled in a slow, careful beat. Pumps woke. Valves opened like eyes. The ship rose 3 centimeters, then 10, then a meter, smooth as a leaf drawn by a gentle current. Dust swirled under the belly, but the ship kept quiet. No flashy burn, no flare to brag. It was like watching a tired bird remember how to fly. Outside, the visor figure looked up. A hand slapped a forearm control. Two more figures emerged, pointing toward the rising hull. A crackle of words ran across public bands, calls to block, to fire warning shots, to stand down. Too many voices at once. The auctioneer shouted something about rules and fees. None of it mattered as much as the slow climb. East, Sarah said quietly. Away from the open ground. There is a service lane between storage rows. We can slip through. Evan tapped thruster nubs on a small panel he had repaired only enough to serve. The ship drifted east, sliding sideways like a well-trained tug. He felt every whisper of air against the skin. He kept the belly clear of crates by inches. A hiss of ion fire snapped across the sky, far above the yard. It was not a hit, it was a warning. Hunters rarely wasted fuel on real shots this close to town. They preferred fear and force without mess. "Do we have any transponder showing?" Evan asked. "Local yard ID only," the ship said. "External. Identification systems are quiet." "Keep them quiet," Evan said. They cleared the storage row and reached the service lane, a straight cut between stacks of old containers and bent antenna masts. He nudged the ship forward. A chain link. Gate waited at the far end, red flag hanging, lock open. Somebody in the yard had left it that way on purpose. Evan filed that fact under gratitude for later. The ship slid through the gate and lifted another 2 meters to clear a low power line. The unknown craft on the ground rotated their noses to track. One of them fired a small grapnel that arced like a slow dart and fell short. The pilot who shot it cursed in a language the public band did not translate. "Hold your fire," the auctioneer's voice came through, strained and brave. "Yard code applies. You want to file a claim, file it with a seal." Saris watched the dots on the scanner. "They will follow," she said. "Of course," Evan said. "But they have to move first, and we have a small lead." He took the ship up and over the yard fence. The dust field fell away underneath, replaced by scrub and rock. The town lay ahead like a low cluster of metal mushrooms holding hands. Beyond it, dry hills ran toward a broken ridge where old quarries cut the land in squares. Harbor drifted in the rock shadow like a leaf caught in a slow eddy. The first jump sat behind them, clean and done. Out the viewport, a small stone rolled end over end, the kind of company a ship keeps when it wants to look like nothing special. Inside, the coil's heat sank into the frame and the hum evened out until it felt like a calm breath. Evan watched the temperature number settle. 8 minutes, he said. "You did well." "I like being useful again," Harbor said in a tone that sounded almost shy. Sarah smiled at the panel with real fondness. "You were always useful. Time could not take that." They ate simple food. A square of nut paste on a cracker, dried apple slices that stuck to teeth, a piece of hard candy that tasted like mint. Saris turned the candy with her tongue and looked at the stars. "This is human working food," she said. "It is food that does not lie," Evan said. "It says what it is and keeps you going. If I had a stove, I would make tea and something hot. Later." "Later," she agreed. When the coil was ready, Evan gave Harbor a small nod, and the ship slid into motion again. The second jump lay at the far side of a quiet sector where few ships went unless they had reason. The route Saris had chosen bent around familiar traffic, like a footpath behind houses. It passed near a cold comet with a wide halo, and then along a rim where dust drifted like fog. Evan liked the rim. Rims are where people put things they do not know how to throw away. There you find salvage and secrets, old panels, and sometimes, if you are kind and careful, friends. They reached the comet's path and tucked in behind it, as if hiding behind a slow giant. Ions from the faint tail patted Harbor's skin and made small sparks in the dark. Evan switched off 2 exterior lights he did not need. Saris adjusted a tiny trim tab on the starboard fin, so the ship's line matched the comet's bend. "Second jump in 2 minutes, Harbor said. "Coil's happy. Fuel feed B is clean, thank you, Evan." "Any time," he said, and meant it. The jump itself felt like a small step off a low curb, then a long glide over a shadowed street that ended in a new quiet. Star patterns changed. The comet was gone. The rim dust thickened until the scanner drew it as soft gray. Saris sat forward, eyes focused. "We are close to a free belt lane," she said. "Small crews trade there. Some are honorable, some pretend. We must be open-eyed." "Open-eyed," Evan echoed. He checked the panels he had tightened in the canyon. One amber light on a secondary plate flickered once and went still, like a child deciding not to sneeze. He watched it another breath, then moved on. A signal pulsed from ahead. Simple, not coded. An old-fashioned ping from a ship that had lived a lot and learned to ask before it took. Harbor received it and showed the bearing on the screen. "Freebelt hail," Harbor said. "One vessel. Power signature small. Distance short." Saris raised a hand slightly, asking for Evan's eyes. He nodded. She pressed the talk stud. "Unknown Freebelt vessel. This is Harbor, a survey arc under protective code. We travel quietly and seek no claim against you. We will pass and leave you undisturbed." A woman's voice came back, low and dry. "Harbor? That name sits on old books. If you are a pretend arc, I will be cross. If you are a real arc, I will be careful. Captain Kira of the Skiff Kindness. I have a leaky exchanger and 2 hands. I also have a child asleep in a locker hammock, so I choose mercy first by habit. State your need." Evan leaned toward the mic. "Evan speaking. We need a heat veil patch and a way across the next 3 hours without attention. We can pay. With repairs. We do not bring trouble, but trouble follows us as if we owe it money." Silence for a beat. Then the woman laughed once, and the sound was not mean. "You speak like a belt man. Hold on my line. I will come close, but not foolish close." A small shape eased into view from the dust. A skiff like a toolbox with an engine, paint rubbed off by work and time. It kept a careful distance nose to nose with Harbor. Both ships pointed along the same lane like 2 travelers leaning against a fence to talk. "Show me your leak," Evan said. Captain Kira sent a live image. An exchanger with a hairline, crack at the edge of a weld, a drip of coolant that made a glitter string, a hand-rolled patch that had held for a while and then given up. Evan squinted and saw the fix in his mind. "You have leftover flex from an air hose?" he asked. "And a strip of hull mesh? And 2 clamps that still bite?" "Why would I have anything else?" Kira said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. He told her the order. Sand the crack edge. Lap the flex over it with mesh like a ribbon. Clamp with 1 clamp on sound metal and 1 inboard. Then paint it with sealant in 2 thin coats, not 1 thick. Let the first coat whisper dry. Before the second, he said. Count heartbeats, 50 is enough. Kira worked with the mic open, breathing slow, hands sure. Saris listened with a look that said this human thing was making part of her heart sit down and take notes. When Kira finished and the exchanger held, a little cheer went through the skiff. 2 voices at once, one small and sleepy. "You bought yourself a day," Evan said. "I will spend it on bread and oil," Kira said. "Now my turn. Your heat shows hot on your port cheek as if you rerouted coolant in a hurry. If you have spare panels, you can hang them not flat but with spacers, a finger out from the skin. Low metal, ugly angles. Heat goes into the small gap and slides. Scanners taste flat numbers instead of sharp peaks." Evan looked at Harbor's stores and nodded. "We can do that. I also have a strip of ink veil," Kira went on. "Old freebelt trick. It is a paint that eats certain kinds of light for a time. I can part with 1 roll and not be sad, but I will ask for a trade, not coins. Trade keeps us honest. Coin makes people silly." "What trade?" Saris asked. "Promise," Kira said. "When you stand where big voices listen, speak a word. For skiffs that choose mercy first. Authorities forget we exist until a file needs a villain. Tell them some of us fix exchangers while our children sleep." Saris did not pause. "I will speak it," she said. "I will say your name, and if you do not want your name, I will say your kind." "Say the kind," Kira said softly. "Kindness does not like paper. Here comes the roll." A small transfer drone slid across the short gap and bumped Harbor's hull in a way that felt like a friendly elbow. Evan caught the roll through a service hatch, stripped the wrapper, and sniffed. Ink Veil had a smell like damp stone after rain. He grinned. It was good stock. They worked fast because fast and careful can be friends when hands know what they hold. Evan cut 3 scrap panels from old cargo floor plates and mounted them on simple brackets he made from a bent grab bar and 2 bolts. He left a finger of space between the plate and Harbor's skin. Saris mixed the ink veil and brushed it on in slow, even strokes one direction. No fuss. The paint drank the light and left a soft, dull finish. Harbor sighed in a pleased way when the new skin cooled. "Your ship likes clothes," Kira said. "Mine does too. Old hulls enjoy being dressed by people who see them." "We see them," Sarah said gently. "Last gift," Kira added. "Lane warning. The first deep gate on your straight line to Ashfall is watched, not by law, by a hanger-on fleet that calls itself orderly. They will scan, smile, and ask for a code you do not have. Then they will ask you to dock and talk. You will not want that talk." "What is the quiet road?" Evan asked. "Fly dumb," Kira said. "Not brave. Dumb. Go wide to the gravel, small rocks and dust, and let your new plates do their work. Your profile will look like a lost tug. When you pass the listening point, do not speed up. Lost tugs don't sprint. Count to 300. Then go." Saris bowed her head in thanks, though Kira could not see the gesture. "We owe you." "You owe me a story told to big ears," Kira said. "And if you ever meet a skiff named Kindness again, remember we traded well." They parted like people who had shared a short fire in cold wind. Evan kept Harbor in the lane until Kira fell behind and became a small tool-shaped star. Then, he guided the ship wide toward the gravel, where little rocks moved like slow rain. He and Saris hung 2 more scrap plates on the starboard cheek to match the first set. He ran a coolant line under them and left the valve half open so a little heat bled into the shadow gap. He watched the scanner draw their heat curve. The line softened, the sharp peak becoming a gentle hill. "Good," he said. "Simple tricks do good work." "Humans are good at that," Saris said. "You make small nets that catch big problems. Small nets break if you pull wrong," he said. "So you pull right." They reached the listening point Kira had warned about. It did not look like anything in front of the ship. It felt like something in the numbers, a pattern in the noise, a dip in the static, a point where waves went polite. Evan kept Harbor's speed steady, not slow, not quick, and watched the count in his head while Saris watched the far field through a narrow band filter. A polite hail came on a general band, the kind that never says stop, but means, "We see you." Evan let it pass like wind through grass. Saris kept her eyes on the dark and did not blink. Harbor breathed through the new plates and pretended to be a tug that did not know names. Evan reached 310 and then said, "Now." Harbor leaned into its line, no show, no flare, just a little more push along the lane that led toward the last point before the Ashfall Nebula. Behind them, something turned its head and frowned at numbers that did not match. Too late. Numbers are slow to anger when a ship has already slipped around the corner. Meridian looked like open hands in space. Tall towers curved toward one another, fingers made of pale metal and quiet light. No banners, no guns, no bragging signs. Only a calm beacon that said in a steady voice, "Bring truth. Leave noise outside." Harbor drifted along lane blue with small thruster taps, neat and clean. Evan watched the numbers on the panel settle the way flour settles in a bowl. Saris sat straight in the taped chair, calm gray eyes on the approach marks, the band on her brow faintly bright where it touched the ship's living core through the bulkhead. They had come far through dust and doubt to reach this place. Here their story would either stand or fall. "Ark Harbor," said the beacon again. "You are welcome. Keep your engines low. Keep your words plain." Evan smiled a little. "Our kind of place," he said. Saris nodded. "Plain words have weight here." A small pod slid from one of Meridian's hands and matched their speed. It had no weapons. It had paint scuffs and a round window like an unblinking eye. A quiet voice came through Harbor's speaker. "Custodian Liaison Nin speaking. Ark Harbor. Identify your sovereign and your warden. Saris pressed the talk stud. Saris, sovereign of the Lumen Marches, traveling under protective code. Evan leaned closer. Evan, recorded as warden for this voyage. Thank you, Nin said, voice warm but official. We will dock you in Hall 3. Hall 3 is for cases with history. Once secured, 2 steps are required before proof is heard. First, the ARC key must be joined to the archive table. Second, an oath of straight voice must be spoken by sovereign and warden together. After that, we listen and only truth speaks. Understood, Sarah said. Understood, Evan said. Harbor kissed the dock with soft magnets and no drama. Hoses attached. The living core hummed at a patient, content pitch, as if it, too, liked halls where people spoke gently. A long window through the docking collar showed Hall 3, a round chamber with a low ring table at its center and listening chairs in a circle. No thrones. No boxes. The floor was simple white with a honeycomb pattern you could only see when you looked close. 2 custodians in gray robes met them at the inner hatch. One carried a tablet with a corner dented from years of use. The other had a small box with a seal in pale blue wax. They looked like people who fixed broken clocks and old laws with the same steady hands. Welcome, the tablet custodian said. I am Sarah. This is Keo. We keep the hall and the air. Please follow us. Speak when your breath is ready. No one will rush you. Saris and Evan stepped through the collar. Harbor stayed connected, its presence a warm weight behind their shoulders. In Hall 3, Sarah set the tablet on a side shelf and opened the blue wax box. Inside lay a thin rod of dull silver engraved with tiny lines like a field seen from high above. The ARC key, Keo said. Each ARC carries one, held in its core and in its crown. Your band, Sovereign, and the living core aboard Harbor together will call it here. When it arrives, we place it into the table. The table will not change it. The table will not judge it. The table will let it speak on all bands at once when we turn the last ring. If you wish only to store, we can store. If you wish to broadcast, we can broadcast. That choice is yours. Saris touched the band lightly and breathed out. We wish to broadcast, she said. Truth must be heard, not only kept. Keo inclined their head. Then let us begin. A gentle chord like rain on glass filled the hall as Harbor and the Crown called to each other. The silver rod lifted itself from the blue box and floated to the center of the round table. Small rings in the table turned one notch by themselves, old machines remembering their duty. The rod settled into a groove and locked with a click so soft it sounded like respect. Sarah stepped back and folded her hands. Before the ARC speaks, the oath of straight voice. Saris and Evan stood side by side and placed their right hands on the table's edge. The wood under the paint felt warm, as if many other hands had stood there in older hours. Sarah recited, the oath in plain words. Speak without twist. Stand without hurry. Accept the weight of the words you release. Let no friend and no fear bend your telling. If you do not know a thing, say so. If you know a thing, say it with enough light that other people can see it too. I swear, Sarah said. I swear, Evan said. Sarah nodded once. Very good. Ark Harbor, do you consent to let your audit log speak? Harbor's voice came softly from the table itself, not from the ship. I consent. My record is whole. My record is not edited. My record will not choose sides. It will tell. Keo turned the last ring. The rod brightened by a shade that was not glare, more like memory rising to the top of clear water. Lines of light sketched themselves in the air over the table. Departure times, cargo lists, sealed messages with their seals unbroken until now. Signatures laid down with old keys that matched the grooves in the rod. It looked like a careful ledger written by a patient person who lived inside numbers. Sarah touched one point with the tip of her finger. Start here, she said gently. The last day before Sarah slept. The hall filled with quiet pictures and plain sound. A planning room in the palace. Night outside the windows. A schematic of Harbor on the wall. Advisor Rowan's voice. younger by a few years, steady, full of concern. He spoke of a plan to keep records safe if the regents moved too quickly. He spoke of a route through cold space to Meridian. He spoke the word archive like an open door for a weary friend. Saris's face held still. Only her hand moved, one small tightening at the edge of the table where Evan's hand rested next to hers. Evan did not look away from the picture. He let his hand be a quiet anchor she could feel without thought. The log moved on. Orders stamped just before dawn, invoking emergency regency, though the law's clock had not yet struck the hour required. A list of names who signed, some with full rights, some with borrowed pens. Bank transfers in neat rows to accounts that had been empty, and now were not. A route change for Harbor made at the last minute, for safety. But the change pointed, not to Meridian, but to a station owned by one of the new regent's friends. Sarah's mouth compressed at that. Keo's eyelids lowered a fraction, not in sleep but in thought. The table made a soft sound like a page turned between careful fingers. Then came the night of flight. The band around Saris's brow glowed brighter in the log view as it joined the ship. Harbor's core pulsed calm as if to soothe a frightened heart. A small message written in Saris's own hand, addressed to anyone kind who finds me, asking that the Ark be kept safe and the record delivered where the law still breathed. The hall held that message a heartbeat longer than needed, as if to bow. Outside the hall, space did not stop to honor anything. 3 ships slid into place just beyond Meridian's polite boundary, their lights steady, their paint too clean. The lead ship sent a tight beam hail to Hall 3 that the walls refused. When that failed, it called open on every public band, at once with a voice so smooth it could have been poured. "This is Advisor Rowan speaking for the Regency," the voice said. "We welcome the Ark Harbor and our dear Saris back to safe company. The Regency has prepared a peaceful meeting at our station nearby. We ask Meridian to delay any broadcast until we can sit with Saris and share bread." Meridian's beacon replied with one simple sentence. "This hall is for truth, not theater. Rowan's ships did not fire, not here." Meridian's open hands carried more than paint. They carried old agreements with sharp edges for people who tried to play at or near open doors. But the ships changed their power signatures, a shift any miner or courier could read. Weapons charged to near, jammers set to ready, tugs primed to assist, a vessel that lost control. Sarah received those numbers on a small slate and set it aside for later. The hall had its own time and the table was not done. The log showed Harbor impounded for years after Sarah slept. It showed the long paper trail that turned an Ark into Lot 27 in a frontier yard. An owner on paper who had never set foot on a deck, a bank that ate itself, a transfer that moved the deed without reading the duty. It showed the sovereign, safeguard line untouched through all of it, as if a small shell had protected a seed under snow. Evan felt a quiet pride that no one could see. Paper can forget people, he thought, but paper sometimes remembers itself. Then the log reached the day of the auction, and Hall 3 heard a small sound from beyond the wall, faint, like a dog huffing at a closed door. When the part of the record with the yard alarms played, 3 unknown ships, short lines drawn toward dust, a mechanic's hand on a manual lever, a sovereign's voice saying, "Proceed with care." Saris did not speak. Evan did not speak. Sarah did not speak. The table spoke in their place, and its voice was enough. When the last line of the log ended, the silver rod dimmed to its usual quiet. Sarah turned to Saris. "Do you wish to add words outside the log?" Saris lifted her chin a finger. "Only this," she said. "The advisor who showed me the path to Meridian later signed an order that pushed me off that path. I ask that Meridian hear his voice in both moments. People are large. Let us be honest about that." Sarah inclined her head. "We have heard both." Keo touched the rod with 2 fingers. "The log is complete," they said. "It bears chains that match our books. It carries time marks that do not bend. It is fit to be stored and, if the sovereign asks, fit to be sent." Saris breathed once. "Send it," she said. To all bands, all halls, all places where people decide with other people's lives in their hands. The 3 patchwork ships spread wide in front of harbor like teeth. Their paint was a mix of colors rubbed thin by grit and years. One had a picture of a bird on its nose. Another had a stripe that did not line up with itself. The last had a row of borrowed panels that fit like a shirt 2 sizes too big. Evan kept his hands steady on the pads. He did not harden his jaw. He did not blink too much. He watched the way the ships moved. People tell you who they are by how they use a throttle. Sarah sat beside him, calm and tall, her hands light on the chair arms, her gray eyes soft but awake. Harbor breathed slow. The living core held a steady hum, not high, not low, like a person, walking at a pace that could go on a long time. A hail came in a rough voice. "Arc ship," the voice said, trying to sound big. "We saw your light on the archive. You carry treasure. You will power down. You will let us board. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Evan pressed the talk stud and answered in plain words. "We are a survey ark with a sovereign aboard. We carry no gold, no fine stone, no fancy art. Our most valuable cargo is a record that already lives in many halls. You cannot steal what the world already heard." A second voice cut in, younger, eager. "The sovereign is worth coin," it said. "People pay to see a crown in a cage." Saris did not flinch. She placed 2 fingers on the band at her brow and touched Harbor through the wall. The ship warmed under her hand in a way only she could feel. Evan's voice stayed even. "If you try to take us, 3 clean ships behind us will enjoy catching you. They want someone to blame for the day they lost. Do not gift them your names." Silence for a breath. Then the first voice returned, less big. "We saw those clean ships," it said. "They smile too much." "They do," Evan said. "We do not." The lead patchwork ship fired a small grapple as if to show it had a spine. The line came out fast, hooked and true. Evan tapped a key he had chalked earlier. A cargo drone slid from under Harbor's belly like a kicked box and caught the grapnel with its own little hands. The line went tight. The drone rolled and rolled, again twisting the line around itself the way a baker twists a string around a loaf. The lead ship tried to pull. The drone let go at just the right moment. The line snapped back and wrapped itself around the lead ship's toothy nose. Harmless, but annoying. The pilot cursed on open band and fumbled for cutters. Evan did not laugh. He spoke the same even way. "We can do 5 more of those," he said. "But I would rather pay you for a good job than fight you for a bad one. Here is my offer. Keep a polite distance. Help us watch our shadow while we do one honest task on a farming moon. We will pay in repair parts and a letter carried by the archive saying you chose the better road. That letter keeps hunters from lying about you later. It is worth more than coins that go." A third voice, dry and older, came from the stripe ship. "Letters do not feed crews." Saris answered that one herself. "True," she said. "So we add food. We have protein bricks and fruit paste. We have bolts and a roll of ink veil that carries a little paint still left in it. We also will put your names in a request for safe passage for small crews. Meridian carries such requests." The older voice did not rush a reply. "Who are you?" it asked at last. "Saris," she said. "Once a daughter, then a runner. Now a woman who keeps her word. This is Evan, a warden who fixes as he goes. This is Harbor, who does not lie." The older voice exhaled slowly. "I am Bren," it said. "The bird nose is Tavi. The striped fool is Ren. We ate thin bread last week. We do not like thin bread." Evan let a small bit of humor in. "Help us for 2 days and you will eat better bread," he said, "and you will sleep easier. Choose." Bren spoke to his 2 in a sideband they thought was private. Harbor gently echoed the sound into Evan's speaker because wardens must know when a room is about to get warmer or colder. Tavi wanted to jump them fast and hope. Ren wanted to shoot lines and cut and run. Bren only said 4 words. "Thin bread is worse." Bren came back on open. "We take the escort," he said. "No tricks, no lures. If your clean friends shoot us, we will say your names loud in ugly places. You will not need to, Saris said. Rowan's men prefer pretty lies. Pretty lies feed no one, Bren muttered. We follow. Say the job. Evan marked the course. We go to a chain of farming moons called Hayfield Ring, he said. They pay tax twice, to 2 offices because papers bend wrong. We will fix the paper with the archive behind us. We will fix 1 broken water unit. Then we go. After that, we will answer a distress from a seed vault in deep space. If you like true work, you can follow there too. Tavi grunted. Seeds. Do not buy fuel. Seeds buy futures, Saris said softly. Ren said nothing. He cut the twisted grapnel from his nose and threw it into a bin. They flew together, not close, not far. Rowan's neat ships held their triangle at the edge of sight, pretending to be clouds. Harbor moved steady. The patchwork ships drifted, to one side and then the other, like dogs that do not know yet if the new person on the porch is friend. Hayfield Ring was not 1 ring, but 4 small moons that shared a name. Each had a thin belt of green and a lot of brown. Each had a small town near water and a bigger spread of fields. At Hayfield 3, the council hall was a long, low building with a wall of windows and a floor made of old planks that had carried many boots and many baskets. Evan and Sarah stood in that hall with Harbor's voice linked to a speaker that looked like something a school might use to play morning songs. Farmers in clean shirts and work pants filled the chairs. A child whispered and was hushed. A dog slept under a bench. The air smelled like soil and tea. The council head, a woman with wind lines at the corners of her eyes, lifted a folded paper that had 2 stamps on it. We pay twice every turn, she said. We tried to pay once. 2 office men came and stood with their hands on their belts and told us not to be silly. We are good at crops, we are not good at law. Saris nodded as if the woman had said something deep. You are not silly, she said. You are busy keeping people fed. We brought a record from the archive at Meridian. It shows who can ask and who cannot. It shows time. It shows stamps done before clocks. It shows hands where hands should not be. Harbor projected the simple parts of the log on the wall. No heavy words. No long lecture. Only the clock that was wrong by 1 hour and 6 minutes and the line in the law that said hours matter. The hall was very quiet. People may not love law, but they love a clear rule that keeps them safe. The council head breathed out. So we pay once, she said. You pay once, Saris said. And you send a copy of this record to anyone who knocks with a loud hand. If they knock again, you call this number. She slid a card across the table with a contact that went to Meridian, not to a palace. A man with big hands and a thin neck lifted his chin. Do you stand behind us, he asked, or do you leave after tea and a nice picture? Saris did not take offense. She simply answered him as if she had asked the same question of many people in her own life. I stand, she said, but I cannot stand in every hall at once. So I will leave a way for you to stand with me. It is called an open beacon pact. It is a promise that when a small place sends a clean signal about a big unfair thing, someone with hands will come. Sometimes that someone will be me. Sometimes it will be a friend. But someone will come. The word promise changed the air. It always does when it is used right. Evan added the other kind of care. Your water unit number 4 is tired, he said. If it stops, your Westfield's brown in a week. Give me 1 day and a bucket of parts and I will make it strong again. That is my promise. The council head looked at his hands and decided to take them at face value. We have a bucket, she said. We have parts. We have tea. They worked quiet and steady through the afternoon. Evan took the water unit apart in a slow circle and arranged its pieces on clean cloth like a map. A boy watched with wide eyes. Evan let him hold a wrench. He told him the names of 3 seals and why 2 should go and 1 could stay. He put the unit back together and ran it. It hummed like a happy cat. The Westfields would drink deep. Saris sat with the council and wrote the Open Beacon Pact in simple words that the farmers could read out loud without stopping. She did not make a seal with her face on it. She made a sign anyone could draw with. Chalk on a door, 3 small circles and 1 big one around them. Small places inside a shared promise. When she finished, She lifted her pen and did not smile big. She smiled small. Small smiles last. Harbor linked the pact to Meridian, so it would live in more than one place. The hall filled with a hopeful sound that was not a sound. The feeling of people who have carried a weight and can now set it down without anyone taking it. Bren's patchwork ships hovered on the far side of the moon and kept an honest watch. They chased off one nosy shuttle that tried to drift too close by simply appearing in its window and looking bored. Ren did not throw a line. Tavi did not angle his nose like a tooth. Bren told them a story about thin bread and they listened. Rowan's clean ship stayed pretty and distant. They sent one hail to the council hall that used very kind words and offered a meeting with regional friends. The council head read the open beacon pact out loud into her own mic and then set it down. She did not answer the hail. She put on a hat and went back to the fields. That night the town cooked a pot of lentils and flatbread in a pan big enough to sing its own